Hello, and welcome back to Tiny Artist TV. For today's video, we're going to be doing group 2 of the spooky group. So I'm doing a set of 3, and then instead of doing 2 groups of 2, I'm probably just going to do 1 group of 4 because I do still have the Zodiac video for this month that's going up. So that should take us to the end of the month, right up into October. And as mentioned, I am doing a different set of videos for October, so stay tuned for that. But for now, we have our revised version of the color chart here. I finally went ahead and took out all the ones that we are already done with, and so we are going to be working with a new number as well. So instead of 115, we're down to 72. So let's go ahead and see what numbers I've got for today. I'm going to switch this to 72. Alright, the first one is number 18. Beach Party. Oh, and of course, if you'll notice, I actually went ahead and numbered this side as well, just so I wouldn't have to do what I've been doing, counting and making mistakes. So anyway, first one is Beach Party. We're gonna mark this in orange, just to keep with the spooky thing from last video. Number 2 is gonna be number 5, which is Poison Apples. Okay. Let's see, there's the orange. And the last one for today's grouping is number 31, Honey Bears. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. This first color palette tripped me up a little bit because when I started the initial sketch, I forgot what I was doing and just started drawing something that would have been much better with a completely different color palette. It was still Medusa, and maybe I'll include the sketch because I do still have the sketch saved on a different layer, but it was Medusa surrounded by like these giant tidal waves of snakes, and I was like, wait a minute, this isn't gonna work. So I take that concept and I go back to my color palette and I kind of chibi-fy the idea to make it work better with the color palette, which is Beach Party. It is very like beach towel themed colors within this palette. So like, again, I basically just take the concept, make it a lot cuter instead of like, it was a very dramatic sketch and I was like, this is not gonna work. But again, I did save it. So anyway, the idea of doing a Medusa came to me just because I was thinking, okay, what is something relatively scary that is associated with water that would fit with these colors? And of course there's all sorts of scary aquatic things, but there's not a lot of scary aquatic things that have a lot of color with them. If I had done something like, I don't know, like some deep sea fish or like a jellyfish monster or like a giant squid or something like that, using these colors would, I think, still have made it cute. So instead of going full scary or full creepy, I just kind of went with the idea of something that is kind of scary in theory, and then just decided to do an illustration styled however I wanted it to be to fit the color palette. And Medusa's just fun to draw. I've drawn her on several occasions. There was a stream a couple years back I did, pretty sure it's up on my channel, where I was drawing Medusa and her 2 sisters, because if you're familiar with the story of Medusa, she is one of 3 Gorgons, but most people are familiar with Medusa because of, you know, her association with Athena and Poseidon, and being a survivor of sexual abuse who was then cursed as a result. But here is the finished first illustration for today's video. It's the Beach Party Medusa. The next sketch, I will admit, is a little bit of a cop-out. So in addition to having drawn another Medusa that I have drawn several times, I decided to revisit another concept that I did a few years back for August 2018, maybe it was 2019. In the first videos I ever uploaded to my channel, my first series I did was August, and one of the days I'm pretty sure the prompt was disguise or trick or something like that. So I decided to draw the Jorogumo, which is the Spider Woman. So I won't get too much into the lore of the Jorogumo because that video is still up on my channel, even if the audio is a little crunchy. Just turn on subtitles and and just bear with it. But yeah, so most people are familiar with the concept of the Spider Woman, a beautiful woman who lures victims back to her cave or her webs and then transforms into this hideous spider creature. This specific Jorogumo, and I was inspired by the color palette after doing several iterations of... So with the color palette being named Poison Apples, I kept thinking of sort of like a dark twisted Snow White. Once I got out of that headspace, I looked at it again and I was like, this reminds me of something. So if you'll see on the screen here in the top corner, well, it's gone now, but you can pause it. There is a plant called the spider orchid. And at first I thought it was called an orchid spider because I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a spider that looks like an orchid, but no, it's the orchid spider? I thought it was called an orchid spider. It is a spider orchid. There we go. Either way, it got me to the same search results of this orchid that looks like a spider. And as you can see here, the color palette is perfect for this. So I took the spider orchid and turned it into an orchid spider Jorogumo. And it's very simple, but I'm happy with the way that it was, executed, because the concept was a very one-to-one translation of turning this flower into this spider and just having the colors that already worked. The only thing I didn't have was white, and I very easily could have included white, but I like the idea of having this bright, soft, inviting pink to be kind of one of the main colors, and then this sort of like fun but still acidic green, just kind of these things that may like entice someone when she's not in this hideous spider demon form to lure them into her web. So yeah, this is the Jorogumo sketch number or illustration number 2, which brings us to 45, I believe. Yes, this is number 45 in the lineup. So last for this video, and certainly not least, and number 46 out of the 115 character lineup, we have Honey Bears. Now for this one, I do remember using this color palette for my Orktober challenge a few years ago for Halloween, and I had done an orc barkeep type situation, very dark, very dingy. Looking at these colors outside of that context, and with this color palette being named Honey Bears, I kept thinking like, it's just like, it's muddy, it's goopy, and the colors are just so similar. How am I going to make something that's not just like a giant mud creature? So I created this eldritch deer, which is, in my mind, similar to the Navahounds that I have drawn in the past. These kind of children of Shub-Niggurath, kind of this eldritch mother of beasts. So I thought of this wandering child of Shub-Niggurath who's been consuming deer, has taken the form of a deer, and has just kind of become this giant, goopy, misshapen amalgamation of woodland creatures. I did kind of play around with the idea of maybe doing like some bears and other things mixed into this, but I was like, no, let's just keep it simple. Let's just make it this sort of like deer hydra goop fest thing. So that is what I did with this one. And of course, because this is not like a true deer, he's got too many limbs and too many eyes. There are a few you can see here in the sketch in the back, a few heads in the back. I do finish those, but then cut those off because I decided that the design is too busy, so I keep it with the 3 main heads in the front, and then just kind of make it this sort of, I wouldn't call it found footage type aesthetic. I was definitely inspired by like a lot of creepy stuff that I see on, I guess we'll call it horror Twitter, because I follow Trevor Henderson and then a lot of other artists who are inspired by Trevor Henderson, who, if you're not familiar with him, he's the father of Siren Head. And just kind of wanting to create this sort of, I don't know, backwoods creepy feeling, which is really hard to do when you're just working with the character and you're not putting the character in an environment. And I'm not someone who typically draws like really creepy stuff. Like, I enjoy creepy media, I enjoy creepypastas and found footage and like those low-res 8-bit video games and things like that. But to actually create that is a skill set that I haven't like leaned into, haven't tried to hone. So for this one to be the only one that's actually, I feel like, really leaning into the scariness out of the three. So far, out of the characters that I have created for what are supposed to be these creepy creatures, I think the only one that actually ended up being creepy was the pumpkin guy. The other ones are just kind of like a traditional, like, Goosebumps Halloween funhouse aesthetic. This one I intentionally tried to make it unsettling, because I know people who have a fear of things that have like too many heads and too many limbs and things that like look like it could be one thing, but you look again and it's like, no, something's wrong with that. So to try to push that further, and I think I did an okay job. The effects that I used to kind of finish this, which I say effects, it's really just the little background pattern and the border, but using that to try to enhance that weirdness, off kilter, something's not quite right with this creature. I think I did an okay job. I'm at the very least pleased with this illustration. I would give it an 8 out of 10 on my personal progress scale. But if there is something else I could have done to push the creep factor with this drawing or any of the drawings that I've done in today's video, I would love to hear it in the comments. I would also love to hear if you think these are, you know, nice and creepy as they are, especially if it's something you wouldn't want to encounter in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night. So that is all I have for you guys today for the next installation of the color palette challenge. And the next video will be, let's see, 47, 8, 9, and 50. And then after that, I have to kind of branch between this set and the next set of videos that I am doing. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, have a weird day.